supply for you at January has now reduced to a larger extent now. Because if you look at it year on year, it was 21.7% or thereabout in 2023. Now it is 31.70%. That's a big margin, and this has issue to do with people's purchasing power. Simply means the purchasing power keep reducing day by day, and it's a big challenge for Nigeria, which the Nigeria government must do something drastically to actually tame these challenges.
So let's look at the actual factors that are influencing this rising inflation. Let's start from there. What's influencing inflation?
Right. The first thing is we have to look at this policy, because policy direction makes a lot of meaning, because a lot of things are reaction towards our policy direction. Then you also look at our foreign exchange rate. It's a big problem. Then you also look at food inflation itself, because that's what really affects common person. If you recall, even President Tinubu made mention that he declared food emergency on food security, and even up to now we have not seen it reflecting in the purchasing power of people. Perhaps if you look at major Nigerian problem is what we call food supply chain, because supply chain is a big problem that we are not taking a good note of. If food is available in Kebbi, there is it to move that food from Kebbi to Lagos to Anambra and other places, but the energy cost that it will cost transport to bring it to the place of consumption, it becomes a problem. So I think we have to look at food supply chain very well. We have to look at foreign exchange and our policy. Then the last one that is very, very critical, that no investment will come if that is not tamed, which is what? Security. Security play a lot of role. Farmers cannot go to the farm to actually harvest what they have. In fact, they have to pay for non-state actor to actually access their farm. So there are big challenges.
Will this have any impact on our interest rates, looking at our borrowing cost?
Right. If you made mention of interest rate, that's part of the policy direction I actually mentioned about. If you look at the MPR, CBN actually just increased the MPR, which is a big challenge, because you're looking at money supply in the public. Yes, there's more money supply in public, but is it with public sector or private sector? Now, private sector are even struggling, especially manufacturing sector, to get money to do business, even though there is a volatility in the environment. And in addition to that, most of them who even produce are complaining of unsold. And what do you mean by unsold? That means they produce, nobody to buy, because Nigeria does not have the purchasing power to actually buy. So I think those policy direction must be think through very well, so as to make sure that they actually do not stifle more of the manufacturing sector. Remember, if manufacturing sector does not produce, it will also bring about unemployment. And if you bring about unemployment, our GDP will also suffer. So we must look at this to balance it very well.
Interest rates here is very key here. Something must be done,
right,
and drastically too, to reduce exchange rate rather.
Right.
We've seen, so much policy is being floated,
right,
on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria. We've also seen, the Ministry of Agriculture. We've seen government, at the center,
right,
release tons of grains
right,
to farmers. We've also seen, at a subnational level, state governors are also rolling out measures to see how
right,
they can, address this problem. As an economist, what kind of collaboration, do you expect to see from the fiscal side and the monetary side, to address this problem?
Right. I also want to even add trade policy, because if you are looking at monetary side, right, there is a little contradiction that we need to look very, very well. If not, most policy will be counterproductive. For instance, CBN is making sure that they increase the interest rate so as to reduce the money supply in the public. But if you also look at the fiscal policy, we also go to import duty. You have increased it to a larger extent. So there's some, there must be a good collaboration. And in terms of the state, the national and the subnational, I think it's very key. You recall during Obasanjo, there is this policy direction where you have a need, seed, lead, where local governments, states, and national will be working at the same level. A good example is we have Niger State just make sure that they acquire tractor. Maybe perhaps it's part of the new increments in the FAC allocation now. Now, there must be direction from the federal government that this is our way to go, because now there is need to invest more in agriculture. We also see CBN bringing out money to support the Bank of Agriculture. So I think these are the things. There must be a good policy direction, well coordinated, that will agenda development in area that is well.
Aliyu Ilyasa, quickly before you go, what
Right.
steps can businesses take to mitigate this challenge we're already facing now?
Right, it's pretty difficult for business now because you have to go borrow and at higher interest rate. But the major thing is that you have to look at what we call procurement policy. So you have to look at your source of raw material, your source of doing business, and make sure you cope with the current economic challenges. I think that's what's moving forward.
Elias Aliyu, an economist, we appreciate your time on the news tonight.
Thank you for having me.